boss despairs and doesn't know what to do, until the intern points out a brilliant solution. Richard Harrison held his head in his hands as he looked at the documents scattered across the conference room table. The traditional handmade furniture factory he had inherited from his father was nearly $2 million in debt, and he had just 3 days to present a solution to creditors or shut the doors for good. That's when the intern, Tyler Johnson, timidly raised his hand in the meeting and said something no one expected to hear from a 22-year-old who had only been there for 2 weeks. "Mr. Richard, I have an idea that might save the company." The heavy silence in the room was broken only by the bitter laugh of Deborah, the company's most senior accountant. "Tyler, with all due respect, you don't even really know how a furniture factory works," she said, adjusting her glasses impatiently. Richard lifted his reddened eyes, weary from crying, and looked at the slender young man in a blue shirt sitting at the far end of the table. Tyler had curly hair and a determined gaze that reminded him of someone, but Richard couldn't place who. "Go ahead, son. Right now, any idea is welcome," Richard murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Tyler opened the laptop he had brought to the meeting and turned the screen for everyone to see. On it were old photos of the factory and some scanned documents. "I found out this company used to make special therapeutic furniture between 1995 and 2003. Furniture specifically designed for people with mobility issues, seniors, and patients in recovery." "So what?" asked Mark, the production supervisor, impatiently. "That was over 20 years ago. The market has changed." "Exactly why it could work now," Tyler continued, clicking on a spreadsheet. "I researched demographic data for the United States. Our population is aging rapidly. By 2025, there will be over 32 million people aged 60 and above. And the number of retirement homes, rehab clinics, and specialized hospitals has tripled in the last 10 years. Richard straightened in his chair, paying attention for the first time in days. "Go on," he said. "Do you remember the piece your father made for Dr. Anthony's daughter? That special chair with physical therapy support?" Tyler asked, showing an old photo. Richard's eyes widened. "How did an intern know about that?" "How do you know that story?" "Because my grandfather, John Smith, worked here for 30 years. He used to tell me about the special furniture you all made. Furniture that wasn't just beautiful, but helped people live better lives." The name John Smith echoed in Richard's mind like a gunshot. John had been his father's right-hand man during the factory's golden years, an exceptional craftsman who knew every secret of traditional woodworking. "John Smith was your grandfather?" Richard asked, his voice shaking. "Yes, he passed away 5 years ago, but he always said I should work here someday. He said this factory had soul." Deborah cleared her throat, trying to bring everyone back to reality. "Listen, this is all very touching, but we have 3 days to come up with $1.8 million. We can't survive on nostalgia." "It's not nostalgia," Tyler said, now standing, gesturing passionately. "It's opportunity. Look at these numbers." He clicked to another tab in the spreadsheet displaying market data. A basic therapeutic chair costs between $8,000 and $15,000 on the market. An adapted hospital bed can go up to $20,000, and demand is growing 15% a year. Mark shook his head skeptically. "But we don't have the capital to invest in new equipment, a new production line." "We don't need to," Tyler interrupted. "The main machines are still here, the technical knowledge is too. Robert from carpentry worked with my grandfather back then. He still remembers how to do it. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing, Robert, a gray-haired gentleman who had been silent since the beginning of the meeting, shifted in his chair. "It's true, Richard. John and I made those pieces of furniture. It was very special work. Each piece was unique." "But how do you plan to get clients?" Deborah asked. "We lost almost all our buyers when Simon betrayed us." The mention of Simon Carter, the former partner who had embezzled company funds to start his own factory, made Richard clench his fists. "I've already thought about that," Tyler said, turning back to his computer. "I made a list of all healthcare facilities within a 200-mile radius. There are 78 retirement homes, 45 physical therapy clinics, 23 geriatric hospitals, and 12 rehabilitation centers." And you think they'll buy furniture from a factory that's almost bankrupt? Mark asked sarcastically. They'll buy quality furniture at a fair price, and we have something the big companies don't, the ability to customize each piece. Every client is unique, every need is different. Richard looked at the young man with a mix of hope and desperation. There was something about him that reminded him not only of John Smith, but also of himself when he was younger and still believed in impossible dreams. How long would you need to present a complete plan? Richard asked. 3 days, Tyler answered without hesitation. The same 3 days we have to find a solution. You're crazy, Deborah said, exasperated. In 3 days you'll get contacts, estimates, contracts. I'll at least get a demonstration. A prototype to prove the idea works. Richard stayed silent for long minutes, staring at the unpaid bills, the anxious employees, the idle machines in the warehouse. All right, he finally said. Let's try. But I need guarantees. I can't gamble with the livelihoods of 40 families. I understand, Mr. Harrison, but give me a chance. My grandfather always said this factory was built to help people. Maybe it's time to return to our roots. The meeting ended with a strange feeling in the air. Half the employees left thinking Richard had lost his mind for good. The other half felt a spark of hope they hadn't felt in months. Tyler stayed at the factory late into the night, studying old blueprints he'd found in the archives. Richard couldn't bring himself to go home either. He wandered the warehouse, remembering the days when his father, Anthony Harrison, had run the place with a firm hand and a generous heart. John always said you'd come back here one day, Richard said when he found Tyler hunched over yellowed technical drawings. My grandfather talked about you a lot too. He said you were the son your father deserved. Richard felt a lump in his throat. His relationship with his father had always been complicated. Anthony Harrison was a strict man who believed affection was shown through hard work and discipline. Your grandfather knew my father better than I did, Richard admitted. Maybe that's why they worked so well together. My grandfather said your father was a visionary, that he didn't just make furniture to decorate homes, but to improve people's lives. Then why didn't you come sooner? Why only now? Tyler stopped writing and looked at Richard. Because I needed to finish my education first. I studied business, took product design courses, learned ergonomics. My grandfather said traditional knowledge without modern knowledge is just nostalgia. Modern knowledge without tradition is coldness. Richard smiled for the first time in weeks. John was always a philosopher, and he was always right. The two continued working in silence until dawn, each lost in their own thoughts and memories. The next day, Tyler arrived at the factory with contagious energy. He had spent the entire night putting together presentations, researching suppliers, and making phone calls. I managed to schedule a meeting for this afternoon, he announced as soon as Richard arrived. With whom? Sunrise Retirement Home. It's the largest in the region. They care for 150 seniors and are building a new wing. Richard paled. Tyler, you can't go around making promises we don't know if we can keep. I won't promise anything. I'll just show them what we can do. Robert and I spent the morning assembling a prototype. Richard followed Tyler to the workshop and stopped in the doorway, stunned. In just a few hours, Robert and Tyler had modified an ordinary chair, turning it into something that looked like it belonged in a hospital, yet with the beauty and craftsmanship of handmade furniture. How did you do this? Robert smiled proudly. Your memory and my experience. John taught me that every piece of wood has its own personality. You just need to know how to talk to it. The chair had adjustable armrests, a reclining back, a footrest, and even a small side compartment for medication, all made from solid wood with flawless finishing. It's beautiful, Richard murmured, running his hand over the smooth surface. And functional, Tyler added. I tested it with Sarah, who handles cleaning here. She has arthritis in her hands and said she's never sat in a chair so comfortable. At 3 in the afternoon, Richard, Tyler, and Robert were at Sunrise Retirement Home, a simple but well-kept building on the outskirts of town. They were greeted by Catherine, a 65-year-old woman who ran the place with the energy of someone much younger. So you're from Harrison Furniture? She asked, offering coffee. I knew your father, Richard, a man of his word. You knew my father? Of course. He made a special table for my mother when she was ill, an adjustable height bed table. My mother used it for 5 years until she passed. It was one of the things that gave her dignity in her final days. Richard swallowed hard. He hadn't known that story. That's why I agreed to meet with you today, Catherine continued. Your father understood that furniture isn't just wood, it's quality of life. Tyler presented the prototype they had brought, explaining every detail and feature. Catherine tested the chair herself, adjusting the armrests and reclining the back. How many can you make per month? She asked. Richard and Tyler exchanged nervous glances. That depends on the model and demand, Tyler replied diplomatically. Because I'm thinking of ordering 60 chairs, 30 for the new wing we're opening, and 30 to replace the ones in the old wing. The silence that followed was deafening. 60 chairs meant nearly $300,000 in revenue. Of course, I can't decide alone, Catherine added. I need to present it to the board and the physical therapists. But if the quality is like this and the price is fair, I think we have a deal. What would you consider a fair price? Richard asked, trying to control his nerves. The imported chairs we were considering cost $8,000 each. If you can match that quality for $6,000, it would already be a significant saving for us. Tyler did the math quickly in his head. 6,000 times 60 was $360,000. It wasn't enough to settle all their debts, but it was a real start. When would you need a final answer? Richard asked. Our board meeting is on Friday. If you bring a formal proposal by Thursday, we can close the deal the same day. Thursday. 2 days, exactly the deadline they had with the creditors. On the way back to the factory, Richard was visibly more upbeat, but still cautious. Tyler, even if we get this contract, we'd still be over $1 million short to pay everything off. I know, but it's a start. And I have other ideas. What other ideas? Well, while you were talking to Mrs. Catherine, I took the chance to speak with some of the staff at the retirement home. They gave me names of other institutions that also need special furniture, and I found out something interesting. What? Mrs. Catherine's daughter works for a company that handles bids for public hospitals. She said there's an open tender for supplying hospital furniture to 12 hospitals in the region. The total amount is $2.5 million. Richard pulled the car over to the shoulder. $2.5 million? Yes, but there's a problem. The deadline for submissions ends tomorrow. Tyler, we don't have the structure to participate in a bid this big. We need clearance certificates, proof of technical capability, working capital. All the certificates are up to date. I checked with Deborah. Our technical capability can be proven with the company's track record and the prototype. And the working capital? We don't have the working capital. Not yet. Richard looked at the young man, trying to understand what was going through his mind. Do you have another card up your sleeve? I have an idea, but we'll need the whole team's help. When they arrived at the factory, Tyler gathered all the employees in the break room. There was tension in the air. Everyone knew the deadline was looming. Folks, I'll be straight with you, Tyler began. We have a real chance to save the company, but it'll require everyone to make sacrifices. What kind of sacrifices? Asked Mark, suspicious. We need to bid on a contract that could bring in $2.5 million. But to do that, we have to prove we have enough working capital to execute the project. And we don't, Deborah reminded impatiently. Not the company, but maybe we do. What do you mean? Tyler took a deep breath. I'm proposing that every employee who can becomes a temporary partner in the company. Whoever invests their personal savings into the project gets a proportional share of the bid's profits. The break room erupted in side conversations. Some employees seemed interested, others scared. You're asking us to bet our savings on a company that's almost bankrupt? Asked Susan from the administrative department. I'm asking you to invest in your own future. If the company closes, everyone loses their jobs anyway. If we get this contract, everyone gains more than they'd lose. Richard stood up, taking the floor. Everyone, I can't ask this of you, it's too risky. With all due respect, Mr. Harrison, Robert said, also standing. You're forgetting something important. What? This company isn't just yours, it's ours too. We've spent years of our lives building Harrison Furniture's reputation. If it sinks, we sink with it. If it survives, we survive too. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Mrs. Agnes from the sewing department, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. I have $40,000 in savings. It was meant for my house renovation, but a house is no good if there's no job to pay the bills. Agnes, don't do this, Richard protested. I can't let you risk your savings for my sake. It's not for your sake, she replied firmly. It's for ours. This factory is our second home. If there's a chance to save it, I want to try. One by one, the employees began to speak up. Mark had $15,000 saved. Susan, $20,000. Joe from maintenance, $10,000. Within an hour, they had gathered commitments for nearly $200,000. It's still not enough for the working capital required, Deborah observed, doing the math. I know, Tyler said, but it's a start. And I have another idea. What? Let's go see your daughter. Richard paled. Melissa? Why? Because she's a lawyer, specializing in corporate law, and because she knows the company better than any outside consultant. Tyler, my daughter, and I haven't spoken in 3 years. She left here angry and swore she'd never come back. Why did you argue? Richard lowered his eyes, embarrassed. Because she wanted to modernize the company and I wouldn't let her. She actually had ideas similar to yours. She wanted to invest in technology, change our production methods. I told her she didn't understand family tradition. And what did she say? She said I was a stubborn man who'd rather watch the company sink than admit I was wrong. Tyler looked around, seeing the expressions on the employees' faces. Seems she was right. Yeah, seems she was. Then maybe it's time to swallow your pride and ask for help. Richard stayed silent for a long time. Finally, he took a deep breath. Where does she work now? She has her own office downtown, Matthews and Harrison Law Firm. Matthews? She got married 2 years ago, Deborah said gently. Ryan Matthews, you weren't invited to the wedding. The pain on Richard's face was visible to everyone. All right, he said, his voice choked. Let's go talk to her. Melissa's office was in a modern commercial building downtown. Richard had never been there before, and the elegance of the place intimidated him. The receptionist announced them, and a few minutes later, Melissa appeared in the waiting room. She looked different, more mature, more confident. Her hair was cut in a professional style, and she wore a navy blue suit that made her seem older than her 32 years. Dad? She said, visibly surprised. What are you doing here? We need to talk, Melissa. It's urgent. She hesitated for a moment, then motioned for them to follow her to her office. Melissa's office was spacious and well decorated, with a view of the city's central square. On the walls were diplomas and certificates, along with some old photos of the factory. You still have pictures of the company, Richard noted, touched. They're memories from when I still believed we could work together, she replied coldly. Melissa, the company is going under. I know. The whole town knows. You know? Dad, I'm a lawyer. I have access to public records, to the courts. I follow the protests, the collection lawsuits. I know exactly what's happening with Harrison Furniture. Richard sank heavily into a chair, defeated. Then you know we have 3 days to find a solution or lose everything. 2 days, she corrected. Tomorrow is Thursday. Tyler, who had stayed quiet until then, stepped forward. Melissa, my name is Tyler Johnson. I'm an intern at the company. We have a plan to save the factory, but we need legal help. Melissa looked at the young man with interest. Johnson? Are you related to John Smith? His grandson. John was an exceptional man. He worked with my grandfather since I was a child. And what's this plan? Tyler explained everything. The therapeutic furniture proposal, the contract with the retirement home, the hospital bidding, the employee's investment. Melissa listened quietly, taking notes. The idea is good, she said finally. But there are several legal issues. To participate in the bidding with this improvised partnership, you'll need to regularize the company's legal status, and that takes time. How much time is, Richard asked. Normally 2 weeks. We don't have 2 weeks. I know, but I can try to speed up the process. I have contacts at the business bureau and the notary's office. If we work all night, we might make it. Richard looked at his daughter, trying to understand her intentions. Why would you do this for us? Melissa stayed silent for a moment, shuffling the papers on the table. Because that company isn't just yours, Dad. It's our family's. It's John's, Robert's, Agnes's. It belongs to everyone who dedicated their lives to building something worthwhile. And why do you still believe in it? I believe in what it could become, not what it is today. What is it today? A company run by a stubborn man who'd rather sink alone than accept help. Her honesty stung, but Richard knew she was right. What do I need to do to change that? Accept that you can't control everything alone. Accept that others have good ideas too. Accept that tradition and modernity can coexist. And would you come back to work with us? Melissa looked out the window for a long time. That would depend on the conditions. What conditions? First, that I have real input in decisions, not as the owner's daughter, but as a qualified professional. Agreed. Second, that we implement an administrative board with input from senior employees. Also agreed. Third, that you let me modernize processes without interference. Richard hesitated. Dad, Melissa said softly, you have to choose. Be the sole owner of a failing company or a partner in a thriving one. All right, I accept your terms. Melissa smiled for the first time since they'd arrived. Then let's get to work. Tyler, do you have the bidding documents? Right here, he said, handing over a folder. Melissa began reviewing the papers, jotting notes quickly. The registration deadline is tomorrow at 5 p.m. We'll need to work all night to get all the documentation ready. What do you need from us? Richard asked. You go back to the factory and start producing prototypes for the bid. I'll handle the legal side. We'll meet tomorrow morning to finalize everything. It was almost 10 at night when Richard and Tyler returned to the factory. They found Robert and 3 other employees still working, finishing 2 additional prototypes. How's it going? Richard asked. Good, Robert replied, not stopping as he sanded a piece. We're almost done with the second chair. Mark's assembling a hospital table in workshop 2. And the other employees? They went home but promised to come back early tomorrow. Everyone wants to help. Richard felt an emotion he hadn't experienced in years, pride mixed with gratitude. Robert, can I ask you something? Of course. Why are you doing this? Why risk your savings on a company that might still fail? Robert stopped working and looked at Richard. You know what John told me before he retired? No. He said, Robert, this company has a soul. As long as there are people who care about it, it won't cease to exist. Even if it has to change form, it'll stay alive. And you believe that? I do. And I believe John was right when he said you'd understand one day. Richard wiped his face, trying to hold back emotion. I think that day has come. Tyler, who had stayed quiet, stepped forward. Mr. Harrison, can I suggest something? Of course. What if we call the company Harrison Furniture and Associates? To make it clear, it's a real partnership now. Richard thought for a moment. Harrison Furniture and Sons, he finally said. Melissa deserves to have her name on it too. The next morning, Thursday, the factory was buzzing. Employees arrived early. Some brought relatives to help assemble the prototypes. Mrs. Agnes showed up with a full breakfast for everyone. We can't work on an empty stomach, she declared, handing out bread, cakes, and coffee. Melissa arrived at 9 in the morning with a folder full of documents. I got everything, she announced. Contract amendments, certificates, technical documentation. I just need the signatures. How did you manage so quickly? Richard asked, impressed. I worked all night, and I called in a few favors from colleagues. What kind of favors? Remember Jennifer, my college friend? She works at the business registry. And Patrick, who was a teaching assistant for business law. He's a notary clerk now. And they did this for you? They did it for the company's story. A lot of people are rooting for Harrison Furniture to survive, Dad. You're part of this town's history. By 2 in the afternoon, all the documents were ready and signed. The prototypes were also finished. 2 therapeutic chairs, a hospital table, and an adapted bed for physical therapy. "Time to head to City Hall," Melissa said, checking her watch. "City Hall? The bid is municipal. The submission of envelopes is at the City Hall purchasing department." The group heading to City Hall was unusual. Richard nervous in the front seat, Melissa driving with determination, Tyler in the back seat reviewing the documents for the 10th time, and Robert in a second truck with the prototypes. The City Hall purchasing department was crowded. Representatives from several companies were waiting to submit their proposals. Richard recognized some local competitors and grew even more nervous when he saw Simon Carter's company was also there. "Relax, Dad," Melissa whispered. "Our proposal is solid." Simon Carter, upon spotting Richard, walked over with a cynical smile. "Richard, what a surprise to see you here. I didn't know you were still in the market." "Still here, Simon, and planning to stay." "Brave. I heard you've been having some financial troubles." "Troubles will resolve soon." Simon glanced at Melissa and Tyler, not recognizing them. "And who are your new partners? Also interested in buying your share of the company?" "They're not interested in buying," Richard replied, lifting his chin. "They're interested in investing." "Ah, I see. Well, good luck then. You'll need it." When Simon walked away, Tyler asked, "Who was that man?" "Simon Carter, my former partner. The man who almost destroyed our company." "How did he do that?" Richard took a deep breath. "Simon became a partner 5 years ago, when the company was going through minor difficulties. He seemed like the solution. He had capital, business experience, good connections. For 3 years we worked together, and the company grew a lot." "What happened?" "I found out he was systematically embezzling money. He created a shell company that sold materials to us at inflated prices. The shell company was his. He also took our biggest clients, offering lower prices because he didn't need real profit in the new company. His profit came from siphoning ours." "And you didn't sue him?" "We did. The lawsuit has been dragging on for 2 years. Even if we win, the money will probably never be recovered. Simon's clever, shielded everything under his wife's and kids' names." Melissa, who had been listening, added, "That's why I fought with Dad. I suspected Simon from the start, but Dad wouldn't listen. Said I was inexperienced and paranoid." "You were right," Richard admitted. "Again. What matters now is moving forward," she said. "We can't change the past, but we can build a better future." The submission of envelopes went smoothly. The bid opening would take place the following Monday, with results on Tuesday. "So, we'll find out if we can save the company on the exact day the creditors execute the debt," Richard observed grimly. "Not necessarily," Melissa said. "I secured a meeting with the main creditors for Monday morning. If we show them we have a serious bid, they might agree to extend the deadline. And if they don't, then we'll have to move to Plan B." "What's Plan B?" "A preventive bankruptcy filing, debt restructuring under terms that won't cripple the company's operations." "Is that possible?" "Yes, but it's complicated, and it means admitting the company is technically bankrupt." Richard fell silent, considering the implications. "At least we have options," Tyler said, trying to stay optimistic. "That's true," Melissa agreed. "A week ago, Dad had no options. Now we have at least 2. On Friday, the day of the meeting with the board of Sunrise Retirement Home, the mood at the factory was tense, but hopeful. The employees were working as usual, but everyone knew this could be one of the company's last days. Mrs. Catherine had requested the meeting be held at the retirement home itself, so the other board members could see the prototypes being tested by the residents. Richard, Melissa, Tyler, and Robert arrived carrying the 3 chairs they'd finished during the week. The reception was warm. Mrs. Catherine had already told everyone about the company's history and the special furniture Richard's father had made in the past. "Mrs. Mary, do you remember the special chairs Harrison Furniture used to make?" Mrs. Catherine asked a white-haired woman sitting in the lobby. "Oh, I do," Mrs. Mary replied, her eyes shining. "My husband had one made for my mother-in-law when she fell ill. It was the most beautiful, comfortable thing you could imagine. The prototype demonstration was a success. The residents tested the chairs, praising the comfort, ease of use, and craftsmanship. One of the home's physical therapists explained how the adjustable supports would greatly aid rehabilitation work. The retirement home's board consisted of 5 people: Mrs. Catherine, the geriatrician Dr. Frank, physical therapist Susan, accountant Mr. Michael, and Mrs. Eleanor, a 70-year-old woman representing the residents' families. "How long would you need to deliver the 60 chairs?" Dr. Frank asked. Robert answered, "With the current team producing 2 chairs a day, it would take 30 business days. If we expand the team, we can cut it to 20. "And the final price?" Richard glanced at Melissa, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. $5,000 per chair with a 2-year warranty and included technical support, Richard said. The board deliberated privately for 15 minutes. When they returned, Mrs. Catherine was smiling. "We've approved the purchase of 60 chairs. We'll structure the contract in 2 phases, 30 chairs delivered in 30 days and another 30 in 60 days. Richard's legs nearly gave way from emotion. $300,000 wouldn't solve all their problems, but it was a lifeline. "There's just one condition," Mrs. Catherine added. "What?" Richard asked, apprehensive. "We'd like a small plaque on each chair with the name of the person who made it. Our residents appreciate knowing their furniture was crafted with care by real people." Robert smiled, moved. "It would be an honor. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now continuing, the weekend flew by. Richard, Melissa, and Tyler worked non-stop preparing the presentation for the creditors on Monday. They needed to show that the company had a viable recovery plan. Melissa had gathered detailed data on the hospital furniture market, growth projections, and competitor analysis. Tyler had created spreadsheets showing how production could be gradually scaled up. Richard contributed his practical experience and technical knowledge. "I think we have a solid presentation," Melissa said on Sunday night, saving the final file on the computer. "I hope it's enough," Richard sighed. "Because if we can't convince the creditors tomorrow, no bidding will save us." "It'll work out, Dad, it has to." Monday arrived grey and rainy. Richard barely slept the night before. He arrived at the factory at 7 in the morning and found several employees already working. "Everyone, you didn't have to come in so early," he said. "Of course we did," Mrs. Agnes replied. "Today is the most important day for our company. We all want this to work out." The meeting with the creditors was scheduled for 10 in the morning at the office of the lawyer representing the group. There were 5 main creditors, 2 banks, a lumber supplier, a machinery company, and a private investor. Richard, Melissa, and Tyler arrived 15 minutes early. The room was serious and intimidating, with a large table in the center and several chairs around it. The creditors trickled in one by one. Richard knew some of them personally. Mr. Andrew from Midwest Regional Bank, who had financed the factory expansion 5 years ago. Mrs. Christine from Smith Lumber, who had supplied materials to the company for over 15 years. Dr. James, who had lent personal money when the banks denied credit. "Good morning, everyone," said the lawyer, Dr. Miller, opening the meeting. "We're here to review the recovery proposal for Harrison Furniture presented by the debtors." Melissa stood up to give the presentation. Her demeanor was confident and professional. "Gentlemen, Harrison Furniture is going through a severe financial crisis. That's undeniable. But we've also identified a market opportunity that could not only recover the company, but make it more prosperous than ever." She displayed slides with data on the hospital furniture market, demographic trends, and pent-up demand. The United States is aging rapidly. Demand for furniture adapted for seniors and people with special needs has grown 300% in the last 5 years. Mr. Andrew interrupted. "That's all very nice, Melissa, but numbers don't pay debts. Where's the money?" Melissa clicked to the next slide. "We have a signed contract for $300,000 with guaranteed delivery in the next 60 days. We've bid on a $2.5 million tender, with results coming tomorrow. And we've identified at least 12 other potential clients for the next 6 months." "What if you don't win the tender?" Mrs. Christine asked. "Even without the tender, with the smaller contracts we've already mapped out, we can generate $800,000 in the next 6 months, Tyler answered, showing a detailed spreadsheet. Dr. James, who had been quiet until then, spoke up. "Richard, I've known you for 20 years. Your family has always been honest and hardworking, but you've faced hardships before and always refused help or to change your ways. What's different now?" Richard stood up slowly. What's different, James, is that I almost lost everything my father built because of my pride. I almost lost my daughter too, and I almost let down 40 families who trust me. He paused, trying to control his emotions. I've learned that tradition isn't about doing things the same way forever. Tradition is preserving what matters while adapting to new times. My father made furniture to improve people's lives. That's what we want to do again. Richard Harrison looked at the other creditors. What would be the specific payment proposal? Melissa spoke again. Installments over 36 months, with a 3-month grace period before the first payment. Interest capped at the federal funds rate. Possibility of early payment if cash flow improves. And if the company can't meet the payments? We offer as additional collateral the employee stock ownership plan being created. As a last resort, you could take control of the company. Christine spoke up. Richard, I supplied lumber to your father for 15 years. Never had a payment issue. I trust your word, but I need guarantees for my other partners. I understand, Christine, and I appreciate your trust. The meeting lasted 2 more hours. The creditors asked many questions, challenged the numbers, requested details. Finally, they asked for a recess to deliberate. Richard, Melissa, and Tyler waited in a side room, nervous. Do you think they'll accept? Richard asked. I don't know, Melissa admitted, but we presented the best possible case. If they refuse, we still have bankruptcy protection, Tyler reminded them. Bankruptcy would be a last resort. It would permanently stain the company's reputation. After 40 minutes, Dr. Miller called them back. The creditors have reached a decision, he announced. By a vote of 4-1, they accept the restructuring proposal with one additional condition. What condition? Melissa asked. They want detailed monthly reports on business progress. And if there are 2 consecutive late payments, the full debt becomes immediately due. Richard looked at Melissa, who nodded slightly. We accept, he said. It was 4 in the afternoon when they left the office. Richard was exhausted but relieved. We did it, Melissa said, hugging her father. We bought time for the company to recover. Now we just need to know the bid result tomorrow, Tyler added. Regardless of the outcome, we already have a real chance, Richard said. That's more than I had a week ago. On Tuesday, bid result day, the tension at the factory was palpable. Everyone knew this would be the decisive day for the company's future. The results would be posted at 2 o'clock on the City Hall website. Richard decided to gather all employees in the cafeteria to wait together. No matter what happens today, he told the group, I want to thank you all. What you've done for this company goes beyond any employee's duty. You've been true partners, true teammates. Agnes, with teary eyes, responded, Richard, this company is our family. Family doesn't abandon family in hard times. At exactly 2 o'clock, Tyler opened the laptop and accessed the City Hall website. The page was slow to load due to heavy traffic. Got it? Richard asked anxiously. It's loading. Finally, the page opened. Tyler clicked on Bid Results 023-2025, Hospital Furniture. The PDF opened slowly. Tyler scrolled to find the final ranking. His eyes widened. I don't believe it, he murmured. What? Melissa asked, seeing Tyler's expression. First place. We won. We won the bid. The cafeteria erupted in cheers. Employees hugged, cried, laughed. Agnes began praying aloud. Robert took off his hat and threw it in the air. Richard, amid the commotion, felt his legs weaken. Melissa held his arm. Dad, are you okay? I am, he said, tears in his eyes. For the first time in months, I'm truly okay. $2.5 million, Tyler kept repeating, amazed. $2.5 million. Mark, the production supervisor, shouted above the commotion. Everyone, this means we'll have to hire more people. The factory is growing again. New cheers echoed through the cafeteria. Richard called for silence and addressed the group. My friends, this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead. We'll need to produce furniture in quantities and quality we've never done before. But I know we can do it. I know because you've proven you're capable of anything when you work together. So what now? Susan asked. What's the next step? Melissa took the floor. Now we'll implement all the changes we've always wanted to make. We'll modernize the production process, hire new employees, expand the facilities. We'll make this company an example of how tradition and innovation can work together." "What about Tyler?" Agnes asked. "Is he still just going to be an intern?" Richard smiled. "Tyler, would you like to be our director of new products?" The young man was speechless for a moment. "It would be an honor, Mr. Harrison." "No, Tyler. Just call me Richard now. We're partners." The weeks that followed were the busiest in Harrison Furniture's history. The company had to hire 15 new employees to keep up with demand. Melissa implemented a modern management system with strict quality control and detailed production tracking. Tyler created a research and development department where new furniture designs were tested and refined. Robert was promoted to general production supervisor, responsible for training the new craftsmen. For the first time in years, Richard began delegating responsibilities and trusting his team. He discovered that leadership didn't mean controlling everything, but creating conditions for each person to do their best. The first delivery to the hospitals was completed on time, with quality that exceeded expectations. The second delivery was also a success. New clients began appearing, drawn by the reputation the company was building. 3 months after the day it nearly closed its doors, Harrison Furniture had a 2-month waiting list for new orders. Revenue had tripled compared to the best month of the previous year. But the real transformation wasn't just in the numbers. Richard and Melissa grew closer again, working side by side to rebuild the company. She brought modern management knowledge, while he contributed the experience and wisdom he'd gathered over the years. Tyler proved to be a natural leader, respected by both longtime employees and new hires. His innovative ideas were always tempered with respect for the company's traditions and values. The employees who had invested their personal savings saw their investments grow quickly. More importantly, they became true partners in the business, participating in major decisions and sharing in the profits. One day, Richard was walking through the workshop when he saw Tyler talking to a group of new employees. The young man was explaining the company's history, telling them about John Smith, about Anthony Harrison, about the tradition of making furniture that improved people's lives. "John always said furniture isn't just wood," Tyler was saying. "Furniture is memory, it's comfort, it's dignity. When we make a chair for an elderly person, we're not just selling a product, we're offering more independence, a better quality of life." Richard approached the group. "John was right," he said, "and that's why this company exists, not to make money but to make a difference." "Mr. Harrison," one of the new employees asked, "is it true the company almost went bankrupt a few months ago?" "It's true. And do you know why that happened? Because I forgot what our real purpose was. I spent so much time worrying about keeping things the way they always were that I forgot to ask how they could be better." "And what changed?" Richard looked at Tyler, then at the warehouse where dozens of people worked with pride and dedication. "I learned that a company isn't one person's legacy, it's the legacy of everyone who's part of it. And I learned that the best leader isn't the one with all the answers, but the one who knows how to listen to the right people." That night, Richard, Melissa, and Tyler stayed late planning the company's expansion for the following year. They had proposals to open a branch in another city, export furniture to neighboring countries, and develop a specialized line of furniture for children with special needs. "Dad," Melissa said, looking at the projected numbers on the computer screen, "do you realize that if we keep growing at this rate, in 2 years, we'll have the largest therapeutic furniture company in the state?" "I do. And do you know what that means?" "What?" "It means we'll be able to help so many more people. We'll be able to provide jobs for so many more families. We'll be able to make the difference my father always dreamed of making." Tyler, who was organizing the designs for the new furniture, looked up. "Your grandfather would be proud to see what we've built together." "Our grandfathers," Richard corrected. "John and Anthony. They planted the seeds for what we're harvesting today." Melissa smiled. "And we're planting the seeds for what the next generations will harvest." "Exactly. This company isn't ours. We're just temporary guardians of something bigger than us." 6 months later, Harrison Furniture was invited to participate in a national specialized furniture trade show. It was the ultimate recognition that the company had become a leader in the industry. At the trade show booth, Richard was speaking with visitors when he saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Simon Carter, the former partner who had betrayed the company. "Richard," Simon said, clearly uncomfortable. "Can I talk to you?" Richard hesitated but nodded. They stepped aside to a more private corner. "I came to apologize," Simon said, avoiding direct eye contact. "What I did was unforgivable. I betrayed your trust, hurt the company, and harmed innocent people." "Why now, Simon?" "Because my own company is failing. I've learned that having money and clients isn't enough if you don't have a team that believes in what they're doing. I've learned that profit means nothing without purpose." Richard was silent for a moment. "You could have learned that by working with us instead of betraying us." "I know, and I know forgiveness is more than I deserve to ask for." "You're right. It is more than you deserve." Simon lowered his head, ready to leave. "But," Richard continued, "I won't carry resentment for the rest of my life. What you did nearly destroyed the company, but it also forced us to become better. In a way, you did us a favor." "How?" "If you hadn't betrayed our trust, maybe we never would have discovered our true potential. Maybe we never would have learned to truly work as a team. Maybe we never would have found our new purpose." Simon looked at Richard in surprise. "You're forgiving me?" "I'm saying I won't waste any more energy on anger. I have far better things to do with my time." "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you do it? How did you recover from what seemed like an impossible situation?" Richard thought for a moment. "We stopped trying to do everything alone. We learned to trust the right people. And we discovered that sometimes the best solutions come from where we least expect them." "From where we least expect them?" "From a 22-year-old intern who had the courage to propose ideas when everyone else had given up." That evening, Richard, Melissa, and Tyler dined together at a restaurant near the fair. It was a tradition they had created. Whenever they traveled for work, they would share a meal to discuss the company's direction. "Do you know what impresses me the most about everything that happened?" Melissa said, taking a sip of wine. "What?" Richard asked. "How the right people appeared at the right time. Tyler arrived exactly when we needed fresh ideas. The employees came together exactly when we needed support. The clients showed up exactly when we needed revenue." "Do you think it was a coincidence?" Tyler asked. "No," Richard replied. "I think it was a consequence. When you do the right things for the right reasons, the right people naturally show up to help." "And what are the right things?" "Treating people with respect, being honest about your intentions, working for something bigger than yourself, never giving up when you know you're doing the right thing." Melissa raised her glass. "A toast, then, to the right people who appeared at the right time." "And to the tough decisions that had to be made," Tyler added. "And to the dreams that seemed impossible but became reality," Richard finished. The three clinked glasses, each reflecting on the extraordinary journey they had lived over the past few months. A year later, Harrison Furniture employed over 100 people. It had contracts with hospitals in 5 different states. It exported furniture to 3 Latin American countries. And it had become a case study in business schools as an example of successful corporate recovery. But what made Richard proudest wasn't the financial numbers. It was seeing the spark in his employees' eyes when they arrived for work. It was receiving thank you letters from families who had been helped by the special furniture. It was knowing the company was fulfilling its true purpose. Tyler, now the director of innovation, had developed over 30 different models of therapeutic furniture, each one designed to solve a specific problem, to improve the lives of people in unique situations. Melissa, as the administrative director, had implemented a management system envied by much larger companies. But most importantly, she had created an internal culture where every employee felt valued and heard. Richard, as the company's president, had learned that leadership meant service. Serving the employees by creating an environment where they could give their best. Serving the customers by offering products that truly made a difference in their lives. Serving the community by generating jobs and contributing to local development. One Friday afternoon, Richard was in his office when Robert knocked on the door. "Richard, got a minute?" "Of course, Robert, come in." The veteran carpenter entered carrying a small, polished piece of wood. "What's this?" Richard asked. "It's a piece of the first table your father made when he founded the company. John kept it all these years. Before he passed, he asked me to give it to you when I thought the time was right." Richard took the wooden piece in his hands. It was small, but the finish was perfect. You could feel the care and dedication that had gone into that work. "And why do you think now is the right time?" "Because now you understand what your father truly wanted to leave as his legacy. It wasn't just a company. It was a legacy of doing the right things for the right reasons." Richard felt his eyes filling with tears. "Did John leave anything else?" "He left a note." Robert handed over a yellowed piece of paper with John Smith's careful handwriting. "Richard, if you're reading this, it means you found the path your father always knew you would. The company isn't made of machines or money. It's made of people who care for one another and work for something greater than themselves. Your father knew that. Now you do too. Use this knowledge to build something even greater for the generations to come. With affection and admiration, John Smith." Richard stood in silence for a long time, holding the piece of wood and rereading the note. "Robert, can you call Melissa and Tyler? I want to share this with them too." A few minutes later, the three of them gathered in Richard's office. He read the note aloud and showed them the piece of wood. "This company started with a man who wanted to make furniture that improved people's lives," Richard said. "It nearly disappeared when we forgot our true purpose, and it was reborn when people like you reminded me of what really matters." "So what now?" Melissa asked. "What's the next chapter of our story?" "Now we write it together. We'll build something our children and grandchildren can be proud of. We'll create a legacy that goes far beyond any one of us." Tyler looked out the window, where he could see employees leaving the factory at the end of their shift. They all looked happy, chatting excitedly with one another. "You know what I find most amazing about all this?" he said. "What?" "That when I first got here as an intern, I just wanted a job. I never imagined I'd find a family. I never thought I'd be part of something so special." Melissa smiled. "Funny how life works, isn't it? Sometimes the best things happen when we least expect them. And sometimes the worst crises lead to the best opportunities," Richard added. "Do you think we can keep this up?" Tyler asked. "This unity, this purpose, this energy?" Richard looked down at the piece of wood in his hands. "We can if we always remember where we came from and why we're here. If we never forget that a company is made of people, not numbers. And if we always put purpose before profit. And if we always keep the doors open for people like you," Melissa said, smiling at Tyler. "People who have the courage to propose solutions when everyone else thinks there's no way out. People who aren't afraid to dream big," Richard finished. That night, Richard went home with a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. He walked through the factory before leaving, seeing the silent machines, the tidy workbenches, the new furniture designs spread across the drafting tables. All of it had nearly been lost because of pride, stubbornness, resistance to change, but it had also been saved because of unity, creativity, and the courage to try something new. He took one last look at the workshop where his father had started it all with his own hands, where John Smith had dedicated 30 years of his life, where dozens of families now found their livelihood and dignity. The company was saved, but more importantly, it was renewed, strengthened, ready for the future. Richard left the factory knowing he had learned the most important lesson of his life, that the best solutions don't always come from where we expect, but they always come when we open our hearts and minds to the right people. And sometimes, those right people are 22-year-old interns who dare to believe that impossible problems have possible solutions. The end. Now tell me what you thought of this touching story. Do you think Richard made the right choices by accepting young Tyler's ideas? And Melissa, do you think she did the right thing by forgiving her father and returning to the company? Share in the comments which part moved you the most. If you know someone who's been through a similar situation, share it with us too. Don't forget to leave your like to support our channel and subscribe so you don't miss other amazing stories like this one.